Yeah.
But as Mia said,
Yeah.
I alone, nobody with me, yeah?
What?
I thought you can keep me
We'll
company.
come in afterwards.
So Nana, you were
Kids
telling me
and
before about your siblings.
About the triplets, about what came afterwards.
About the triplets and about what came afterwards.
Yes, about the triplets I forgot to tell you, but I told you the story about when my father telephoned his mother and told him that first he phoned and he said, Mum, or whatever he called her, and said, we've got a boy. It was also very nice. He phones 10 minutes later, half an hour later, and says, Ima, we've also got a girl. So I said, lovely, very nice. Didn't you know there were twins on the way? No idea, I don't believe that, incidentally. And then he phoned a third time after another half hour or whatever. Said, Ima, we've got another girl. Oh, stop it already, Julius. I said, stop it already, you don't believe it. As if they came on the computer bed. Anyhow, he was unfortunately one died afterwards, after 10 days or something. So there were two left. It was a full-time job. They sent a nurse from the Jewish hospital, big, experienced nurse, very, very interesting person. Incidentally, she was belonged to our, what is he, Melchior, foreign, what is he, Melchior? You know, there's a Chaver Knesset Melchior, or whatever you call it.
Melchior.
Uh-huh. He was an aunt of his.
Okay.
You see, get me away, rattling away, which is not really good for that.
That's exactly what it's good for. Exactly.
Yes? Okay, so...
What actually is a Jewish hospital? And what was it different from a regular hospital?
Well, that is really, in this case, it was run by the Jewish community. It was subsidized by the state, I suppose. But
this was in Hamburg.
Yes, it was in Hamburg. It was a
Can
big
you put your
hospital.
flag up, do you think?
No, it's all right. Leave it out for the moment. It doesn't have to be anything.
One doesn't see anyway, one only sees from your arms up.
No, I'm comfortable like this. So that was one of the episodes. What else would you like to tell me about? More about my siblings? Well, there were the two left, and
so there's
Heini,
you.
Heini was the beautiful boy with curly hairs and lovely smile. My sister, even when she was a baby, was always inclined to be grumpy, you know.
Who, Miriam?
Rose. And
so there's you, and then Heini and Rosie, and triplet. And then there was Azriel.
Who died after of pneumonia and was about a year old.
And then Miriam.
And then was Miriam. And then was Chloe.
So?
Now tell us about Miriam when she was little.
Miriam was a darling. She was very charming. In a way, and she knew how to be charming.
When she needed something.
Yes, yes. She's, I don't know, she was really, all her life, she was always very much in demand, very popular, when that was later on. But one of her stories when they came on Aliyah was that's interesting in connection to today's situations, because everybody was hard up and after they made Aliyah from Germany. And Miriam always told us how came home from school and then past the baker conditorei, which was called Tuftam. You wouldn't remember that everyone was in.
It was called what?
Tuftam.
Where was it?
It was in a town of, I think, the Steinmatzki is now. Top of me last dort. And it was a very lovely place, and every time she came home from school, she was standing there eating her sandwiches, which she should have eaten before, and imagine that was one of those special delicacies which they had in the window there. And some are being jealous that she just couldn't have these little luxuries. But that was the time when it was very hard to make ends meet, and he was just new in the country. And Oh, I think she's, in a way she suffers from this lack of money till today, because the habit of having to economize somehow got very much into her way of thinking.
Turned into a habit.
Very much so, yes. And then of course there was also the time of the Milchemet Atzmaut, when they really didn't have very much food. Lived off, what was that green stuff called? The
Chubezot. No?
yeah,
No.
it's some kind of grass, which you have it today as well as seasoning. And kub, not
Kuzmara?
kusba, that's right, yes. Do you know that they had kusba made salads of it?
That sounds to me like schug. Kuzbara salad is basically schug.
Maybe, I don't know what it is.
Wait, Nana, but maybe you made Aliyah with your
With my
parents in
that's right.
39.
She and Gabi and Heini came separately, but also made Aliyah at the same time.
And you met Rosie in England
Rosie came to England a week later.
a week after you.
And she worked terribly hard as a mosaic. She was really taken advantage of. It was quite pitiful. It's amazing. It depends very much on how you take it. When I came to a family I came as a nanny for a newborn baby. I was supposed to do all kinds of work, especially later on, but I still managed to, what shall I say, just overdo anything but with a certain dignity. And poor Rosie was slaving away and making and being taken advantage of to 24 hours a day. But it's by the way. Ask me something and I'll tell you what I will.
I would like to hear about Kristallnacht and...
That's actually much more important, much more interesting. Kristallnacht. I was already not in Hamburg, I was in a small town, Halberstadt, where my family came from.
What was its name?
Halberstadt.
Halberstadt?
And you see, I forget you're taking it, so I've got to be careful how that
No.
you can edit it later on anyhow.
That's exactly the point, that you just talk and...
Names that would be good. Weird names like Halberstadt that we don't know would be good if...
Halberstadt is a chapter by itself, because in fact just today night I spoke to my sister about the question that we didn't get compensated for the ground of the house we had. We've got photos of the house, and it was all erased and a big block of flats was built up there. But anyhow, to come back to what you asked me, so on Kristallnacht,
If you could go also a bit backwards, I mean, what year was Kristallnacht? 38.
38.
So if you could, say, give us a brief...
Of what happened before?
Yeah, say from 33.
Well, of course, from 30 years I didn't hardly remember that far. But then I've got to go back to what I did still at school and post-school and all that. I don't know, that's very interesting.
I mean, when the Nazis
When
came...
the Nazis came to power. But there was...
I mean, when
I
did you
don't know
start
whether I
feeling that it was going to be dangerous and that you need to run
well,
away?
actually quite 30 was still all right. I think when they won the election, the big election, when they really got into power was, I don't remember the exact year, but it was 36 and they first really came to power and got going. And the thing was, once they came into power, they first deposed the president. Germany had a president until then. Hindenburg was his name. That's important. Hindenburg was still a Democrat, conservative. And of course Hitler was just the opposite afterwards, was a dictator. And the first thing he did was dispose. Mind, he was an old man, he was already in his 80s or something like that. But he was still of the old type of school of governing, according to the old rules, which Hitler didn't have to do. And Hitler came into power and really felt now's the time the other people, the other nations should help us. They should really do. It can't get any worse, because there was first the time of the boycott, when they closed all the shops on Shabbat, particularly the Jewish shops. There was a stone Bible in a Jewish shop. There was guard outside every shop. So afterwards, it was not only on Shabbat. They closed down the shops one after the other. Took what they called the takeover. They took over the shops from the Jewish people, and just adopted them as their own. Next was the word. Then it was time really. It can't get any worse. Until they came suddenly marching through the streets in Hamburg, singing all those terrible songs like when Jewish blood. How do you say spritz? What's the word for spritz?
Is spilled.
Spilled. It's not quite the same.
Splashes.
Splashes, that's better. Of our bloods, we feel nice. So we feel very happy. Yeah, happy, that satisfies us. And that was always on Friday night that they marched through.
What year was this?
That was after 36.
What does it sound like in German? In English it sounds kind of...
Wenn das Judenblut vom Messer spritzt, dann geht's nochmal so gut. If Jewish blood spills off our knives, we are even happier.
How do you say it again?
If Jewish blood...
No, in German.
Wenn das Judenblut vom Messer spritzt, dann geht's nochmal so gut. That was one of the favorite songs, and many similar ones, you know. The Nazis were especially singled out as being patrons of youth, and how they would influence the youth. And it was always the youngsters who were marching through streets, always Friday night. And that's when we felt one morning, one Shabbat morning, I was standing with my father, discussing whether it's time to go. That was 36.
How old were you at the time? 1980?
36, I would have been 18 years. And I said, truly, it's about time we packed up and went. I mean, people did already leave then. And he said, yes, I would want to leave, and I feel I owe to my children that I should leave. But I also feel I owe to our two mothers, his mother and my mother's mother. And my mother's family by that time also had their business annexed. It was a big wholesale pharmaceutical wholesale business, and they closed it down. And he felt he just couldn't, until there was real persecution, and there was already, but there wasn't this mass killing, of course. And one felt at the time the Nazis, the nations are bound to come in and stop it, which was in a way naive. But as it so happened, at that time he came to an inheritance of his aunt, and there was enough money to let us go abroad for summer vacation. We went to Denmark that year. And it was quite amazing how you suddenly felt you could speak freely, because you had already to be very careful with what you said. You never know whether there wasn't some Nazi or Nazi-inclined person coming behind you or by chance overhearing your conversation.
What kind of things can't you say?
Well, suppose you only had to say, well, it's terrible what the Nazis do now.
You couldn't talk badly about
Friday
them.
night, or did you hear that they pulled the men by the beards through the roads and things like that, that if anybody heard that, they would immediately call a police officer to have you arrested. So you really had to be very, very careful what you said in public. It was frightening. It was very frightening. And when the first time ever went aboard, we suddenly felt that relief we could say what we wanted to and be careful. It was quite an experience. And then, of course, it was still 38 when suddenly all hell broke loose. And let's just take a message.
What about it?
Get adjusted again. Because having that feeling of freedom. It was quite frightening to come back and see what. And then, of course, there was at the same time, and that was interesting to mention, how they, as I said, that how they boycotted the Jewish shops and closed them and left. They couldn't really stop people from entering the shops, not legally, but they did all they could otherwise. And then there came, there was also in between, they suddenly decided they're going to deport all the immigrants from Poland who had been in Germany for generations, and von Shabbat they exported them all. Hey, Shulcha, Daima, what's it about weiter?
Ik heb nog van doen.
Had je wel wie man moet ze bellen? Dat wat je zei, is man je nog. Tough, and then came Kristallnacht 2 years later, 38.
9th of November.
Then I was in 38, end of 38. And then I was already in Halberstadt, place of my father's birth. And
Why did you go to Halberstadt?
I happened to get my first job there as a nurse, as a children's nurse, also to twins. There's Rabbi Yitzhak Auerbach, you heard of him? I nursed him as a newborn baby. He was also about 70-something.
Yeah.
They had twins. His father was also a rabbi in Halberstadt. And there came this...
Where's Halberstadt?
Halberstadt is somewhere in the middle of Germany, near the Harz Mountains. It's a beautiful place.
100 kilometers from thing.
I'm not sure about that. I just don't know, but there was this mountain range of the Harz Mountains, which some summer holidays we actually rented an apartment there for. If you went away there, you went for months, you know, you rented an apartment somewhere, got your bits and pieces for cooking, for setting up home, staying there. And as soon as you heard the news about this von Rath being murdered,
Water.
oh, that's a cup of coffee, so it's good enough on the table.
Yes?
Yes, it's okay. It's
It's cold. You want a new one?
cold coffee, I don't mind cold tea, I don't like. Funny about percentages. Thank you, dear. So, as soon as I heard that it was, of course, alarmed about what's going to happen now. They murdered this Van Rath. It was something on the delegation in France.
Who did they murder?
A fellow by the name of Van Rath. It was something in the German embassy in France, in Paris.
Oh.
And next morning, as if it was all prepared, in Halberstadt they took the whole community, that means all the men who went for Shacharit in the morning, they took away straight from Bet Knesset. And I still hear the screaming of those women. The women heard that the police had already come to arrest the men, loaded them all into, what's it called, lorries, that's the word I was looking for.
Hmm.
And drove them off without anything.
So why did they take them?
The women were screaming, of course, being scared of what's going to happen to them now. And anyhow, that's how it was. I think some could go still to a collective place to bring them under and things like that. And then came, and that was for a while the last you heard of them. And suddenly you got postcards for the official stamp. I'm in Buchenwald, which was one of the camps, it doesn't matter which. My father was arrested a day later from his surgery in the evenings to another place near Berlin. And they were staying about 5-6 weeks. He was there, came back like a skeleton, really like a skeleton, without beard, without moustache, without hair.
How did you get him out?
Well, that's a good question. My mother moved heaven and earth to get him out, of course. But the only way you could get your men out was if you could prove that you intended to leave the country in advance. And she had a visa for Honduras.
Honduras.
Honduras, of all places. And for, no name of the other places, doesn't matter. Colombia, I think, was one of them, and Bolivia. All these out of the places.
All over South America.
Yes, but not America wouldn't let them in.
No, South America.
That's right. South America was still prepared to give you visas, and you could buy them with bribing if necessary. And that's how he got out, and proved that he really was on the way out. They were lucky enough even then to let you out alive. But
and then at the last minute, they managed.
Yeah, at the last minute they managed to get my uncle's here paid 1,000 sterling to get him out. And that was to get a certificate from the British. What's it called, mandate to be able to get in, because of course then already the British stopped people just coming in, and that's how the illegal aliens started. Yeah. And so fortunately they got here, which was I won't leave out all the details of the preparations and the aggravations and the excitement till you really got out. I know it was so difficult that I didn't want to. I had my visa for England, and I tried to refuse to go out before I knew my parents were out, and but my parents wouldn't hear of it. First, I went out even a week before Rose. She also had a visa to go out, but they wouldn't allow me to wait for her to leave a week later, which was quite frightening, because the way I gave in, I did leave, and I knew they were leaving another 2 weeks later, so it was all within a month, it was very quick. But from the moment I got out, I don't think I slept really one night till I really knew that they were out as well. Because the fear of not letting them out, and being stuck in Germany, even although you didn't quite know how bad it would be, how bad it could become, I was still scared of what they could do, because there were plenty of murders everywhere, It wasn't official so much, officially, but they murdered anyway. And Phil, ask me questions. Better questions.
I ask about Denmark. You said that in Denmark you could talk, you could say whatever you wanted. Mm-hmm. Did you suddenly discover that, let's say, your sister thought something, or that something that you didn't know somebody else was thinking in Denmark? Do you see what I am?
I don't know whether I can really talk for myself. I know I was very aware of the feeling that you could go where you want, that you could say what you want, that you could really enjoy yourself, because starting from the strictness that you weren't allowed to go to a theatre, or cinema, or concert, or anything like this, that feeling, would of course give you a feeling of the fear of you weren't living. You were living, and yet you weren't living to the full. Incidentally, there was a very good, what they call Kulturbunds in Germany. Just very capable, very quickly managed to organize their own concerts. They were very good concerts on their own place even. And that was because it was necessary also to distract, but it helped. Now in Denmark, it wasn't so much that we were really consciously where we were, and yet it was somehow taken for granted. You could do here all you want, you could go swimming, you could go enjoy your life simply. When we were too young really to get very much out of it, but I remember occasions when we were living in this very small place, in this holiday place near the sea. But there were lots of other Jewish families also on holiday at that time, which was also interesting. And I remember one of the first things we learned from a very nice Jewish family who were also on holiday was that one also sang the Mirror on Shabbat morning. It's rather funny, you know, he sang the usual ones Friday night and didn't know much about the others. Anyway, that's not important.
Very important, what do you mean?
Okay. It was interesting how friendly the Danes were, you know. And just last week they celebrated the, what was it, about the 50th or something anniversary of the Danish Jews, Danish public, starting with the king saving the Jews, you know, you heard that story?
Ah, yeah.
And that was last week, it was on radio again, you know, how wonderful they were, how they saved them all by night, saving them in boats to get off the coast and so on. It was quite an amazing, it was
But was Denmark? Was Denmark under Nazi?
No, they had a Nazi, they had the fellow named Quisling, who was a terrible Nazi. But officially Denmark was free, you know, and they really were fantastic then, and that's why everyone is so puzzled why they suddenly become anti-Israelis, you know, anti-Semites, because the same as in Holland, you know, the whole attitude has changed in a way. I wonder why this is just jealousy of us that we made it. And of course, there are lots of articles in the press generally about why it is that that those countries who were helping us are suddenly seem to be turning against Israel, not against Jews as such, but against Israel, which is a very frightening symptom in most white blood.
Say that you touched on anti-Semitism, if I may. No, if I may ask questions, not if I may have the camera.
It's a good idea.
Saying that you touched on anti-Semitism, how do you explain that Dafka in Germany, what happened? I mean, as far, I mean, they look like human beings up until 1920 something, 25, 29.
I really think it was basically, I mean, they had a very high culture, you know, in every way. And one thing's not what I think. It really was a strong process of brainwashing. After all, it went over, started to be more noticeable in 1936, but it existed already before. And, you know, you had this youth which was absolutely brainwashed into believing that what Hitler says is right. It was, first of all, adoration of Hitler himself. He managed to make himself unpleasant as he was to the wonderful figure who was bringing. It was, I think, I don't know enough about politics, but I think it started with the fact that suddenly Germany was having lots of unemployment since the going down. Before that, they had a fairly good economy and were living up, and suddenly it went down and down and down. There was lots of unemployment, and that was a result. So it was easy to brainwash the public to say, look, we can offer you a much better life, we can offer you employment, we can, etc., etc. I think that's what started. Obviously, it was a process of over a number of years, but Hitler very quickly became the obnoxious figure he was, but this very successful and passive figure, you know, you still hear him shouting and screaming with this terrible voice. You get frightened just by the way he spoke, and yet apparently that's a public right. It's very hard to describe what did it. It was really hoping for a better future.
Does that mean that another country in another time in history, hoping for a better future, could do similar things again?
It's an interesting question. I think, yes, I think of things, even if you talk about Israel and the way things are here at the moment, I can't imagine us going that far. But the tendency of being very discontent with the government because of the unemployment and because of the starvation. I mean, the statistics of how many people are unemployed and unemployed and undernourished, it's frightening and could easily turn the public against the government.
Yeah, but it can cause a revolution. I mean, one thing would be if people in Israel would one day finally wake up and decide to do a revolution, and other people would say, oh, the Arabs are to be blamed for it, let's kill all the Arabs.
That was going to be a very drastic step,
I mean, say in South America, so the revolution